Okay, so we have discussed and hopefully have understood the basics of Grice's intensional semantics. After having done so, let's now look at some problems, some objections to Grice's theory of non-natural meaning. I'm going to discuss three problems that can be raised with respect to Grice's theory. First of all, Grice explains sentence meaning in terms of speaker meaning. So he does not believe in literal meaning, that would be sentence meaning, but rather he wants to explain what a sentence means in terms of the speaker's intention, and that's what speaker's meaning is. So the speaker's meaning is explained in terms of speaker's intention to produce beliefs in the hearer. Okay. Now the objection goes as follows. You cannot explain sentence meaning in terms of the audience recognizing the speaker's intention in uttering something. Why not? Well, because for the audience to pick up on the speaker's intention, the audience already has to understand what the speaker has said. The audience already has to understand the meaning of the utterance. So you cannot interpret the meaning of an utterance by means of the speaker's intention, because the hearer has no chance of understanding the speaker's intention until the hearer has picked up on the meaning of the phrase, the utterance. Now, maybe in the case of very simple intentions, it's possible to detect them quasi-behavioristically, that is, without understanding what someone has said. You know, if someone cries for help, then maybe even someone who doesn't speak English, doesn't understand the word help, will know what the person is trying to say. But for intentions with any fair degree of complexity, this is simply impossible. The behavioral guide is too imprecise. An explanation of how such intentions are recognized will inevitably rely upon the audience recognition of the literal meaning of the sentence. That meaning is a route to speaker's meaning. So the idea then is you cannot define sentence meaning in terms of speaker meaning, because you need sentence meaning to pick up, to understand speaker's meaning or speaker's intention. So how could Grice defend himself against this charge? What could he say in response? Well, one thing he could say is the following. He could say, I, Grice, am committed to claiming that sentence meaning consists in speaker's intention. That's what my theory says. But I'm not committed to the claim that we can find out about the speaker's intention independent of understanding what the utterance literally means. That is, I give you a theory of meaning, but my theory of meaning does not necessarily allow you to understand what a speaker is saying if you don't already understand the speaker's language. So I've given you a theory of meaning, but I haven't given you a guide with which you can go out and understand or detect what people are saying. So that's a possible response Grice could give to this objection. Here's a second objection. Grice explains sentence meaning in terms of speaker meaning. Yes. And speaker's meaning is explained in terms of speaker's intentions to produce beliefs in the hearer. That's the thesis. So on Grice's theory, sentence meaning is defined in terms of the intentions with which a sentence is uttered, along perhaps with the response that is standardly secured in an audience by that utterance. Now, as an account of meaning of sentences in natural language, this will not do for the simple reason. The majority of such sentences in a natural language contain ones that are never and never will be uttered. There will therefore be not be uttered with any intention. If a sentence is never uttered, it is never uttered with an intention, and if it's the speaker's intention that determine the meaning of the sentence, then we're unable to say of the unuttered, the non-uttered, the ones that have never been used, those sentences, what they mean, or in fact whether they have a meaning. So that's the problem. How can Grice explain the meaning of these unuttered sentences? There are infinitely many in any language. There are infinitely many because by means of our grammar we're able to construct infinitely many sentences with just a finite vocabulary and the rules of grammar. So here's one response that Grice could give to this objection. He could say, well, in the case of the unuttered ones, the meaning of these sentences is determined by hypothetical intentions, by what a speaker would intend by such an utterance, or we may say by what a speaker could intend by such utterance. But that's of course a problematic move, because as we saw before, you could really use a sentence to mean more or less anything. So the conclusion therefore would be that these unuttered sentences mean more or less everything or anything. That's not a very happy conclusion. So it seems as if in the case of unuttered sentences, Grice would have to resort to something like the conventional context in which the sentence is uttered. But as we saw before, he really thinks that speaker's meaning is more basic than conventional meaning. So this wouldn't be a happy move for him. It wouldn't be one that is consistent with his theory. Here's a third objection. It's an example to do with monkey sounds. So on being inducted into the army, our agent, let's call him Alvin, is given a test designated to establish sanity. Alvin is an irritable academic. The test would be appropriate for morons. One of the questions asked is this: what would you say if you were asked to identify yourself? And now the person who is supposed to respond, Alvin, replies in the following manner. So Alvin makes monkey sounds. That's Alvin's response. So the question is, what do these monkey sounds, or in fact, do these monkey sounds mean anything? And the problem seems to be that on Grice's theory, it seems as if these monkey sounds do have meaning. Why? Well, Alvin intends the officer who asked the question to be offended. And he intends the officer to recognize that this is what he tries to achieve by saying, ooh, 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 ooh. And furthermore, the officer becomes offended by means of the recognition of Alvin's intention. That's what makes the officer so mad, is because he knows full well that Alvin wants the officer to think that he is a moron by making these sounds. So the officer understands that, the speaker, Alvin, intends the officer to pick up on his intention and to form the belief that he is a moron on the basis of the recognition of this intention. So all of the pieces of Grice's theory of meaning are in place. So we would then have to say that Alvin non-naturally means something by his monkey sounds. Non-naturally means that the officer is a moron, say. But one may object that this is implausible because monkey sounds are meaningless regardless of the context in which they are uttered. Now, what should Grice say about this? I think what Grice should say is that, well, in this particular context, and it is a very special context, maybe it's okay to say that the monkey sounds do non-naturally mean something, like you, the hearer, are a moron. So he could simply bite the bullet and say, no, the intuition that there is no non-natural meaning in these monkey sounds is incorrect. In this particular context, the monkey sounds do have non-natural meaning.